How many times have you been out on the golf course and you've hit your irons fantastically, but you've really struggled with the driver? And then the next time you go out, the driver, best club in your bag, and you're really struggling with the irons. Well, it's not uncommon. And the reason is because they are two different clubs that require two different setups and two different swings. So in this video, I want to show you the key differences in the setups between your irons, specifically your mid irons, and your driver. If you can nail the setup, doesn't guarantee great performance, but it gives you a much better chance. Let's start with the iron. Now this is a 7-iron. So the first thing would be, where do I want that golf ball to be relative to me? Well, let's use the upper body as the reference rather than the lower body. I want the ball slightly forward of the center of me. That would be the zip, my chin, my nose. So the way I do that is I start with my feet touching and I take a couple of steps. The step I take with my trail foot is going to be slightly wider. That leaves the ball slightly forward of me. So as I now let that club hang down from the zip, you can see that that ball is just fractionally forward of center. Now this will change based on the iron. If I was using a longer iron, let's say a 4-iron, that ball would be slightly further forward to give me that little bit extra launch. But for the golf mid-irons, I should say, ball just forward of center. Once we can do that, we then want our feet to be around about shoulder width apart. And you can see there I've put a couple of references on the screen. And I would love you to have both of your feet slightly flared out. So the best way to think about that would be if this was a clock face that I'm looking down on, this foot would be to 11 o'clock, this foot would be to 1 o'clock. That really helps rotation, helps us pivot back and pivot through. In terms of weight distribution, this is really key. We are looking with our irons to be hitting the golf ball and then the ground, hitting down on the ball. That's what we see all the great players do. We can help and encourage that with where we set our weight. So using my knees and my hips, I'm going to be moving those a little bit towards the target until I just start to feel a little bit more weight is in my lead side. Now you'll notice as I'm doing that, number one, there's not a huge amount of movement, it's quite subtle. And number two, my head isn't moving. I'm not moving my weight this way, I'm moving it with my midsection. So my knees should look slightly forward, my hips should look slightly forward as well, and I feel a little bit more pressure through that lead leg. What that has also done is helped me just create a tiny bit of tilt in my spine. You can see it's not perfectly neutral, it's tilted a little bit away from the target. The final thing, when we're looking at it from this face on, would be where is the handle relative to the club head. The last thing I want you to do with your irons is have the handle back behind the club head. What I would love you to do is have the handle slightly forward. So the grip of the club is over the inside of my lead thigh. If I can adopt all of those little checkpoints, I should have a pretty orthodox setup with my iron. That's going to help me make a nice center turn, it's going to help me get ball turf contact, and it's going to help me strike the irons well. However, if I set myself up in the exact same way with my driver, I'm likely to get some pretty poor results. In fact, there's a very good chance the ball won't even get airborne. So we need to make some changes. What are those changes? Well, the first one would be, where is the ball relative to you? It needs to be a lot further forward. We do that in two different ways. So we take our setup still with our feet together, ball opposite the middle, but this time I'm going to take a very small step with my lead foot, and I'm going to take a bigger step with my trail foot. So because that golf ball is now off that heel, it's a lot further forward of me. So there's my reference point, there's the middle of me. You can see how the ball is much further forward. That is the first thing we do to help that ball move up in our stance. The second thing we do is we make a wider stance. Because look what happens as I start to widen my stance. Look where my sternum goes relative to the ball. I know that's getting pretty extreme, but you can see as I make a wider stance, I end up more behind the golf ball. So with the driver, number one, the ball is further forward relative to you, and number two, we take a wider stance. So you can see how that ball position now is drastically different than it was with the iron. I still want my feet flared out, 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock, that's not going to change. And this time, I want my weight distribution 50-50. We're looking to change how the club approaches the ball. This is going to be a more upward hit, ideally. That's going to help you maximize your distance. The more we start to lead into that lead leg, we more get iron feels. We're promoting the same ideas we have with the iron. We want to get away from that. So I'm going to be sort of waggling my feet, shuffling my feet, trying to find that perfectly balanced position at 50-50. And then the final thing would be, I want the club shaft to be nice and neutral. So the grip of the club is in line with the leading edge. The last thing I want is to have the handle leaning forwards, because it could open the face or it could deal off the club. Either of those are going to be quite costly. Having the hands a little back is not the end of the world, but let's try and get the grip in line with the club head, and this would be my setup. I'm going to have a little bit more tilt through my shoulders, and I might have a little bit more spine tilt away from the golf ball to help me launch that golf ball into the air. Those are the key differences from the face on. When we look from the down the line, there actually isn't huge amounts of differences. The club is longer with the driver, therefore we're going to be still a bit further away. But the key difference would be the arm hang. Let me take a setup to driver and explain what I mean by that. So here's my setup. And if I was to take my trail hand off and relax it, you can see that it hangs kind of inside of the golf club. So my arms with the driver are slightly extended. They're slightly raised and away from my body. That's not the case with our irons. When I take a setup with an iron, and do the same, take my trail hand off and relax it, you can see it sits opposite the golf club. So with my iron, my arms are hanging a little bit straighter down. With the driver, we're a fraction taller and the arms are a little bit more extended. That's really, really key. Apart from that, everything is going to be the same. So driver, a little bit taller, arms more extended. If you can nail the setups, you're going to be in a position where you're more likely to have days on the golf course where you are performing at your best with your driver and with your irons.